What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Stone Hard Sports. This episode, we are going to do both. I'm going to try it out. One on YouTube and one on, general music platform, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, all that kind of platform, plus YouTube. So we're going to put it out on both today. And today's episode is obviously going to be talking about the NFL playoffs. We just had a wild card round finish, and we're into the divisional round, and we have a few changes from what I had initially thought was going to happen in that round. So I'll go ahead and analyze the games that just happened, and then we'll go ahead and look forward and preview. We got the college football playoff championship game, which I don't have a ton to say there. I kind of covered it a lot in my last episode, and it was kind of exactly what we expected, at least for the Final Four. So we'll just get into that game. And then NFL head coaching firings. There were a few teams that have fired their head coach. Only one of them has found one. So we're just going to quickly dive into those as well to end off the episode of kind of what each team maybe is going to look for, who they should hire, what happened to their previous coach, stuff surrounding the team, all that stuff. Rumors as well, mainly rumors, but we're going to try and pair them with a coach that maybe fits that team. So let's just first go ahead and start off with the wild card takeaways. I think I'm only going to really cover a few games. There were only like two or three, maybe two, it was two, just close games. That was kind of it. Most of them were seemingly just main blowouts. Some were expected. I think others were a bit more shocking, I would say. But to me, the biggest surprise was definitely the Chargers getting, blown out by 20 points to the Houston Texans. Now, it was at Houston because they did win their division. But this was a game I was honestly pretty confident in picking when I picked the Chargers. You get to the Rams, Vikings, Bucks, Commanders, those were kind of in the middle, okay, could be good, could be bad. I don't really know. Either one could win. It's kind of hard to pick. And one of them at least turned into that. But this game, it was kind of shocking how one-sided it was. The Chargers are one of the lowest turnover teams. They turned the ball over, I think, the second least in the NFL, or maybe it was the least coming into this game. And they had, 4 turnovers, I believe, in this game. They couldn't run the ball at all. They had 2.8 yards per carry. I think obviously their running back room isn't very talented, but they do have J.K. Dobbins, potentially coming back from that injury. Maybe he wasn't ready or obviously was not himself or 100%. And the offensive line really kind of got beat up on. The only offensive lineman that wasn't horrendous, because all of them were really bad, was Rashawn Slater. And that was it. She's obviously their star tackle. Joe Alt, even the rookie at other side of the tackle, he was not very good. Ladd McConkey was kind of their only viable receiver, and they tried to get it to him a good amount, but there's only so many times you can really throw it his way, just the kind of type of player he is. And while it wasn't all on Herbert, he definitely, obviously, didn't help. 1 touchdown, 4 picks. The performance, objectively, is not as bad as the passer rating. His passer rating's 40, which is terrible, and just based on his pure throwing performance and everything, it wasn't that bad. I know the stats make it seem less, but in terms of what was actually a turnover-worthy play, what some unlucky things here and there, but it ultimately it wasn't great, so it doesn't really matter anyways. He had a 60 PFF grade, which was the exact same grade he had in the only other playoff game he's played, where they blew that lead in Jacksonville with obviously their former horrendous head coach, Brandon Staley. The defense wasn't bad, the Chargers' defense, but they just could not hold on. Their pass rush up front, they definitely need to change some stuff. Joey Bosa did absolutely nothing, pretty irrelevant. It really feels like he's going on the downward trend right now. Depending on what contract he's on, I might look to potentially change that up because injuries have kind of derailed him, and his age is getting older, and I think his deal is definitely just not worth what he is. but this is more about the Chargers' poor offensive performance in this game and Houston's great defensive performance than it is about anything else. I think that's kind of the main thing, is Chargers' offense versus Houston's defense. That was the biggest thing. Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, all their main guys really showed up in this game. And I want to be clear. When I say Chargers poor offense, Houston great defense, that's exactly what this game is, and I mean it. Exactly what it is. And you might be thinking of C.J. Stroud and everything. Yes, I understand. But Houston's offense had, I think, 8 penalties. They had 3 turnovers, Houston's offense. They were 36% on third down, only about 9% better than the Chargers. They had 2 red zone trips where they were stopped with no points. Or one of them, I think, was a field goal. The other one was no points. CJ, the best thing he did in that game, he made some, I think, 1 or 2 or 3, maybe, I think 2, like, just great third down plays. Really good. Obviously, to the Texans' real MVP, Nico Collins. If you've been listening to the podcast, you should know that. Nico Collins is what runs this offense. But he really wasn't great, C.J. Stroud. He really wasn't great in this game. He actually had, funny enough, the same amount of turnover-worthy plays than Justin Herbert in this game. It's just one had 1 interception in the game, the other one had 4. Kind of how the ball bounces sometimes. He's got the playoff wins, CJ does. Obviously, you've seen stats of him having more playoff wins than a number of quarterbacks combined who are good, and all that stuff. But this year's playoff win, it's not comparable to last year's. It's just not. The estimated amount of points added by the offense and everything was very minimal. And I know you might be thinking, oh, well, what does that mean? Obviously they scored all the points. Basically, it takes into account all of the whole totality of the game. So the offense could score a touchdown, but if the defense got a pick and took it back to the red zone to the 10-yard line, the offense isn't really adding that. Even though they are pushing it in, it's a 10-yard thing. You have 4 downs to do it. Or you went to the red zone this many times and still couldn't convert. That's kind of what it's like. It's going over, the actual totality of the game and putting it into perspective of okay, this is how much the offense really contributed. It was mainly all the defense. It really was. And, again, I don't want to take away from CJ a ton, but it's not the same as his playoff win last year. It's just not. But, hey, it's a win and a win. Good for him. But Herbert is another talking point because it's kind of getting harder and harder for me to defend him as a top 5 quarterback. It's getting very hard. I really thought this was going to be the thing that was going to be hey, look, this is what he is. He's got stuff. He's had coaching issues, horrendous coaches so far, injuries, all valid stuff, and he's still performed. But this was really disappointing and shocking because he's got Harbaugh. They had a really good, regular season. They almost beat the Chiefs twice. They have good wins. And just to come out there and perform like that, it was just very shocking. Again, he's not number 1 blame list, but he's the quarterback, so he's obviously going to be looked at as such. We'll see where he goes in my quarterback rankings video that I do yearly. I'll do it on this YouTube channel. Go check out the last one if you want to see what our thoughts were, me and Mathis NFL. My friend Mathis, I have that video on my channel. It just feels like the Chargers clearly this year had a limited ceiling. It was just hey, their limited ceiling might be a playoff win, not getting no playoff wins and getting blown out. But I think they're going to start to need to getting more real talent, not just elevating these guys because Harbaugh is a good coach and everything. I think they're really going to start official stuff now of where, okay, they're getting some actual NFL level, we can, if you develop us, we can become stars type talent. At wide receivers, specifically, Ladd cannot be the only viable wide receiver. Tight end, there's no real, Will Dissly's there, but he's not a tight end 1 as much as you want to force him to be. Halfbacks, J.K. Dobbins is good. J.K. Dobbins can just not stay healthy, and I think it'd be smart to at least look at another running back because I think it doesn't hurt to have multiple running backs at all. In fact, it helps you. I think a lot of the teams, unless you have a Saquon or a Derrick Henry, I would look to have multiple running backs in my backfield that are very viable. And pass rushers for sure. They're getting older over there, so they're going to have to deal with some stuff, the Chargers will, but that was a very shocking game. And now Houston goes to Kansas City. Not even going to really speak on that game because Kansas City will take care of Houston. I guarantee you that. So you want an easy bet, go ahead and combine, have a Kansas City win in there. Go bet that. I'm guaranteeing you they're going to make the AFC title game. This team's not going into Arrowhead and beating them, so that's for sure. No need to speak on the playoff games that weren't really noteworthy. We knew the Ravens would win. We knew the Bills were going to win. We knew the Eagles were going to win, but the two others are kind of more interesting. Both NFC games, and let's start with the Washington-Tampa Bay game. Total credit to Jaden Daniels and the great story for the Commanders breaking, their playoff drought streak and everything. But this is really more on the Buccaneers really screwing it up and just completely blowing it. I think that's what this game really is. The Buccaneers did a good job shutting down the run versus the Commanders. Their defense didn't play great, but the Commanders did have 3 red zone trips without a touchdown. They had 1 turnover on downs and then 2 other field goals. And they obviously win on the Commanders do, on a game-winning doink field goal with a kicker that's been passed around the league and was barely been there, and it's a crazy story. But for context, I think Tampa Bay had the ball in the fourth quarter up by, I believe it was 4 or so. So a field goal in their, a touchdown lead. And they were in the fourth quarter, 12 minutes left, and I can't remember if it was first or second down. It may have been first down. They run a jet sweep, and the receiver goes in motion, and he's about to cross, and Baker's about to hand it off to him, and he puts it right in Jalen McMillan's chest, like right there, and McMillan, it just goes right through his hands and just doesn't secure it, and they fumble inside their own 20, and it leads to a Commanders touchdown on fourth down, which I'd say was the second biggest reason that the Commanders won, was because of their fourth down. They're one of the best fourth down teams in the NFL. I think they have the best percentage. So that fumble was the only turnover of the game, led to an immediate touchdown in the fourth quarter, and it was literally the difference in the game. I mean, Tampa Bay got the ball back after that, and they scored a touchdown with 4 minutes left, and then the Commanders waste all that time, go all the way down the field, and kick the game-winning doink field goal. So the biggest difference in this game, it was that close, was the turnover. I mean, Tampa Bay really knocked off a lot of time where they got the ball back with, I'd say, 10 minutes. So they knocked off like 6 minutes when they got the ball back after Washington scored that touchdown off their fumble. If they could have gone down the field and wasted that much time, they could have been up, if they scored a touchdown, by double digits, and the game might be over. Or if they if they get a field goal, they're up by 7 points, and Washington has to go down there, and they need a touchdown just to tie the game. So that fumble was huge and literally cost Tampa Bay their season. It did, and that was the biggest difference in the game. It was. It was good play from both quarterbacks. Jaden brings like a second Lamar Jackson type element that just makes him so hard to defend on any given play, and it's just why they're so good on fourth down. Because coming out of college, like Jaden Daniels is way more of a polished thrower than Lamar Jackson was. Lamar Jackson's still the best athlete, but Jaden, his speed is very good. He might not be as shifty, but he's he's got that it factor for sure, and he can throw it on all 3 levels of the field, and he does a great job processing. He was an older quarterback coming out anyways, but I'm not necessarily fully regretting, but I wish I had my grade on him higher. I had him at around like a B+, and that was just because I love Drake May, and Jaden went 2, Drake May went 3, and the only issues were just the stature and injuries. That was the biggest thing, and that's not something you can really predict. So as long as he's been healthy now, they're great. But again, my only concern is going to be injuries, and I would not be surprised if maybe at some point throughout his career there's some kind of extended injuries issues, or maybe the career ends sooner than we think, which is very tough to say because I don't want to wish that on anybody. But that was kind of the biggest issue, was his frame and the way he plays. Very tough. Put his head down, go get the first, and I think they've been really teaching him to roll out of bounds a lot more. And if he's been doing that a lot more, he's going to be in the NFL for a longer. So, again, don't want to take anything away from Jaden Daniels, but he was good. It was kind of like C.J. Stroud and his first playoff win. Like, he was good. But in terms of this game specifically, it was more about the Buccaneers blowing it. It really was, which sucks because, again, good plays by both quarterbacks. Baker was not bad. He was good. So really sucks for him to be good in a playoff game that you lose at home. But definitely the most interesting playoff game for sure, at least in this wild card round. And so then we get to Commanders-Lions. This game could be more interesting, especially offensively. Both are similar in terms of good offense, maybe lacking defense. It would just be, I think Lions cover both of that. They have a better offense than the Commanders and a better defense than the Commanders. So, I think obviously with being at Detroit Ford Field, I don't think anyone's beating them at Ford Field this playoff run. So I think I'm confident in Lions win. And then we have the Rams over the Vikings. It's what I picked. I had the other two were switched. I had the Chargers. Never would have picked Houston. And then the Tampa Bay Commanders game I went back and forth on. And again, that easily could have been a Tampa Bay win. Just really unfortunate for them. But I did have Rams over Vikings. But it's not. I mean, this score is definitely not what I thought. And it honestly could have been more. The Rams could have won by even more. And I am just going to say I told you about the Vikings' doubts all year. In my rankings videos and my or podcast episodes and the Super Bowl circle, I was just highly doubt of the Vikings. I just was, and it was all surrounding Sam. I said, "Hey Sam, let's see you do it at this point," and that didn't happen. That just didn't happen. No need to get crazy in depth on this game. It was just a total team difference. But we could just kind of go into the future and the main guys here. Sam Darnold in this game was not good, and he was worse than Herbert. I know Herbert had worse stats. Sam Darnold was worse than Herbert in his game than Herbert was in his. He just was. Now, the O-line wasn't great, and the wide receivers were below expectations, kind of around average play, but it was all much better than what Herbert had. And Sam Darnold, he got sacked 9 times. It was the most sacks in an NFL playoff game. And, yeah, the O-line wasn't amazing, but a good amount of those were just him holding on to the ball for a while and just taking a sack. A lot. There were a few times in those sacks where it's like, okay, you could have gone here. You could have gone to this guy. I will say Jefferson and Addison very much disappointed. Addison had some drops. They had some misses. Jefferson wasn't the X factor that he's normally is. They did disappoint, but they weren't, inept. They were there sometimes. And I think it was just kind of bad timing where Darnold might have time, but then they're not open. And then when Darnold doesn't have time, they are open, which, hey, that's literally what happens on defense. They're sending more people versus them sending less people on a blitz. So that's kind of how it works, and you got to get separation there. But, and it was also just a total coaching difference. It was a total coach diff. Sean McVay ran circles and coach circles around Kevin O'Connell, and I think that's going to be kind of interesting to see where that goes because, Kevin O'Connell is definitely an amazing coach, had a great year, much better than we expected. But his 2 playoff games, he's lost to the Daniel Jones and the Giants at home, and then after an amazing season, getting obliterated by the Rams. So, with 14 wins? So, I'm not saying you look at that, but I'm saying, hey, what do you need to change, to kind of get over the hump here for the Vikings? But offseason is going to be interesting. Sam Darnold's probably going to get a Baker Mayfield type deal when Baker got it. But ending on the 2 games that Sam Darnold did with the Lions game and the playoff game, that's not great. Maybe it seems like a formula has been found from Aaron Glenn and the Lions defense, and he might be seeing ghosts out there again. But it'd be interesting to see where Sam goes. But it feels like he's probably going to get a deal somewhere. This quarterback class is, for the NFL draft, not great. There are probably 2 quarterbacks right now that you can say, hey, we can start him right now. He still needs to develop, but we can start him right now. We're able to do that. But at least, in terms of this first-round class. And then there's a lot of other teams that you could say, hey, we might want to go into quarterback, like the Titans, the Giants, the Browns, the Raiders, probably more than I'm not thinking of. There's a good amount of teams there that the need for quarterbacks of wanting to go in a different direction in that position doesn't meet the supply. The need is more than the supply. So it feels like Sam Darnold, purely based on that, is probably going to get some kind of deal from some team somewhere. And it'll probably be in the Baker 30 to 40-ish range. I think that's a big difference, 30 to 40, but he was looking at maybe 50 before those 2 games. So unfortunate for him, but I do think he'll get a deal. Just depends on where. And after that, Vikings are probably just going to be looking at J.J. McCarthy and his development. And I think this is going to say a lot about how good of a coach Kevin O'Connell can really be, as he's not shown playoff success, but he's got J.J. McCarthy. He was their guy. They wanted him, and I think his development and seeing how he'll be will be huge because he was the big wild card in that draft. He was kind of the unknown. He won a national title, but had a great team around him and didn't do a ton there, but he didn't need to, and that was kind of the arguments that were going on. He showed flashes here, but there, very young, so it'll be very interesting to see how he does. I think it'll kind of define O'Connell's career with at least the Vikings head coach is going to be, hey, you got your guy. Let's see how you do. And now we're going to preview the divisional round. Again, the 2 other games I already mentioned, but there's other 2 more interesting playoff games. The Rams at the Eagles. And I am going to tell you right now, I would be very scared to just blow it off and stick and pick with the Eagles. Very scared. My issue with the Eagles and why I didn't pick them to win the Super Bowl was because of Jalen Hurts and his issues throwing under pressure or just winning the game by throwing the ball. Rams had the most sacks in a playoff game last week, so that it doesn't really bode well. But they did play each other, the Rams and the Eagles, earlier this year. Philly won by 17, but they did have 2 big Saquon breakaway touchdown runs. He had over 200 yards. It was Saquon's, obviously amazing game. And last game, Saquon was good, but I don't think he's going to do what he did against the Rams again. Especially with the Rams defense being healthier before, I don't think he's going to do that again. With it being at Philly, it does make me feel a little bit better. The Rams are 6.5-point underdogs. Honestly, I would take that, to be honest. I think it'll be closer than people think, and it's going to be really hard for me to pick the Eagles, but at the same time, it's going to be hard for me to pick against them just because it's the Eagles at home and they have the best roster in the NFL. So I can really see it going either way, but I think based on their previous play, and it was in L.A. at that game, I think the secondary for the Eagles and the defense is just so good. I think it's going to probably overwhelm the Vikings a little, or the Rams offensive line a little bit. And I think they're going to be able to win by just kind of slightly avoiding throwing the ball. And that's kind of what they need to do. If they want to win the game, Hurts just cannot be throwing it a lot. And that Packers game, they honestly should have won by more. And the Packers team was so injured, and it could have been a closer game, to be honest. The Packers, I wouldn't be surprised if they were healthier that they would have won that game based on how the Eagles played. So I would not be shocked at all if we have a Rams-Lions NFC title game, but I'm going to stick with my pick. I'll stick with the Eagles, but don't be surprised if the Rams show some trouble there up in Pennsylvania. And then the big one. Buffalo at Baltimore. I already went into most of the analysis for this game on my previous predictions video for the NFL playoffs because obviously we had these 2 teams meeting. The line has come out. Baltimore is 1.5-point favorites at Buffalo. Zay Flowers, though, might not play, and that was something we did not know while picking these games, which makes it potentially a little bit different. But the reason I picked Baltimore, the reason I picked the Ravens was because of the poor run defense by the Bills and kind of what they showed in their previous game when they played each other. Now, I do still think it's a coin flip. I don't want to just change up my pick, so I'm going to stick Ravens. But no Zay Flowers makes me not as tight at the hip as I was with this pick in terms of my confidence there. I already made the bets for it at the time, at the start of the playoffs, so unfortunate for me. But I think the winner of this game, depending on how, again, the Chiefs seem to play different in the regular season, but if they play similar against the Texans to how they did in the regular season, the winner of this game, I think, could really make the Super Bowl. I really think they could. So that's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. And it's just going to be an awesome game. I can't wait. It's going to be a blast. I really hope it's a very close game. So that's going to be one to obviously everyone's going to have on their calendars. Hey, watch this game, because the winner of this game, they look like the best team in the NFL. They do. Again, Chiefs in the playoffs, they're just something else every time, and I honestly could see them doing the same thing. But huge game here. I'll stick with the Ravens, but going to be insane. And in college football playoff, we have the title game, as expected, based on what the Final Four was, Ohio State and Notre Dame. Good for Notre Dame, finally making it. They've kind of been out, of the CFP for a while, and they've had some good teams and players, but now they finally get a chance, and they take advantage of it. Ohio State's going to win, though. They just are. I thought whoever made it from the top half when the original playoff seedings came out, I think they would win. They were going to win it all, specifically like at the very top, meaning whoever won against Oregon between the winner of Tennessee, Ohio State, and then the winner of Ohio State, Oregon. I thought whoever would win that game was going to win it all. And yes, that was including my disbelief in Texas, which I've already noted, by the way. I had that in the beginning of my distrust in Texas. But, Notre Dame is a very good team. They're a very good team. I think they're a very high floor team, but they have had some injuries. I worry about their secondary a little bit versus Ohio State receiving core. And Ohio State is graded as the best run defense team. And Notre Dame really relies on the run to open up their offense for Riley Leonard, their quarterback, transfer from Duke, who's had a great year. But their running back's very good. Love for Notre Dame. He's great. But Ohio State is literally the best run defense team. And I think if they shut down the run, Riley Leonard, I don't think he can really beat you without that ability to have more guys paying attention to the run. So they're just going to be expecting pass even more, and I think that's just even worse for this team. So I really won't expect this to be super close unless some unexpected, unlucky stuff happens, which could happen all the time, or if quarterback for Ohio State, Will Howard, just completely implodes and loses the game, which has happened before against Oregon. But he's been very good recently, so I don't think that's going to happen. So I expect Ohio State to finally get their ring, and Ryan Day, after losing to Michigan and everyone wanting to fire him immediately, goes on ahead and wins the national title. So shout out to them. It hasn't even happened yet, but I'm saying shout out to them. They're probably going to win. They probably will be. If they don't, we'll have some interesting stuff to talk about on the next episode. And now on this shorter episode we have, I believe we're at kind of 30 minutes, which is because I just, there's only so much stuff to talk about. I do have a video I'm working on with mock draft, because there's obviously the NFL mock draft, or the NFL draft that's coming up. And then I'm going to do a kind of revisiting NFL drafts. So I'm doing a lot of kind of deep diving into revisiting the 2022 NFL draft, because in my opinion, I think after 3 years is a pretty good time to take a look at, hey, how did this draft play out? Like, what are the grades that we give now? What was the reactions back then? I kind of love those videos, so I'm trying to make one myself. So that's all the stuff I'm working on, obviously in school as well. So we don't have a lot of time to be producing a ton of content here. But for the last, 15 minutes or so, maybe less, probably 10, we're going to go over the NFL head coach openings based on who was fired, and one of them, at least, already does have a hiring, and kind of we'll get full grades for all the hires when they're occurring in a different episode when they're already done, but we'll just kind of see what the openings are right now. And the first one that is filled already was the quickest one was the Patriots. They obviously got rid of Gerard Mayo after one season, and they ended up bringing in former player for the Patriots, Mike Vrabel. I understand the pushback in giving Gerard Mayo only 1 year, as he was basically the hand-picked guy for the last 3 years to be the coach when Bill Belichick retired. But I think this is going to be a decision that they are so glad they made in hindsight. I'll, again, go into hiring grades later when everyone's hired, but this is just going to be an absolute perfect fit. I mean, this is really the modern-day Bill Belichick with even more intensity just in terms of his personality. And I think he totally proved himself in terms of building a program with Tennessee and making the most of what they had. I trust him to find a good offensive coordinator. He's done it before. So I think when he does that, it's really going to save Drake May because Drake May is so talented, and I would buy all the Drake May stock I can right now because he's going to prove how talented he is. Now that he's got a real enforcer, culture builder, and Drake May I think can fit perfectly there. So Patriots fans, I think you should be really happy and excited because you quickly – I know you had the Mac Jones thing. I know you were upset when Brady won his titles with the Patriots. You are trying to go on your trajectory in your Patriots, era 2.0 with completely different people, and you might be having a sustained success that teams haven't had in 50-plus years. So I think that's how good it is. So you can guess my grade when it comes out, but very, very just Patriots fans at least should be very, very excited. They should be. Next one is going to be the latest one. That's the Dallas Cowboys. This one was very poor timing in Cowboys fashion, but I get it. I get the firing, but objectively, I know the name is hated. I've had some distaste for him sometimes, but Mike McCarthy's just not a bad coach. He's not. His record speaks for itself. But I don't think that Dallas was going to reach the heights that Jerry expects with the roster and just with what the team looked like. So, and again, I don't think you can say McCarthy can't win a Super Bowl because, hey, he literally did. It's just they do, like every Super Bowl team, have to have a good amount of stuff go right, and I don't think he's as much of an elevator in terms of just team-wise as other coaches are, but he's objectively a good coach. He is. Now, who's going to replace him? It's really up in the air. They just interviewed Kellen Moore, Robert Saleh, a few other guys here, other names floating around. But one of them that's the more interesting one that has gained a lot of steam has been Deion Sanders. And Jerry is really looking to get in the spotlight, to get the spotlight on Dallas again. This was their lowest attendance for their training camp, really the least amount of excitement they've had in a good while, and he might be looking to Deion Sanders. Now, more stuff has been coming out day by day. Deion Sanders has stated that he would accept the job if he was offered it. He would accept the job. And if he does, I think there's going to be just obviously a ton of push to go ahead and get his son in Shadur. And obviously you're saying, hey, the Cowboys don't have a high pick and they already have Dak. It'd be a big issue for sure. I saw something that said Jerry Jones would be okay taking on the $100 million dead cap of trading Dak Prescott, who has a no-trade clause, by the way, so he'd have to approve the place, which could there be quarterbacks that be looking for Dak Prescott? Yeah, absolutely. Like we mentioned before, the need for quarterbacks at this point is lower than the supply for this current offseason. He'd be willing to take somewhere close to that dead cap hit. He'd be willing to do so if he would be able to obviously hire Deion Sanders and then go ahead, trade up, and draft Shedeur Sanders in the NFL draft and trading away Dak. Would that be insane? Yes, it'd be insane, but it'd be insanity that I would love to see. Would they probably be objectively worse? Yeah. But the talk, like constant interest surrounding them and all the stuff, it would just be very entertaining. Jerry would obviously love it, especially when, they don't live up to their expectations. It's going to be, crazy. But, Shedeur Sanders, just as a prospect, he doesn't look like he's going to be better than Dak Prescott. He doesn't. I think I'm not comparing the type of player, but if you're comparing the impact any given quarterback makes, his ceiling is probably Dak Prescott at like the very top of his ceiling. So, you're really going sideways here, and it's for the brand and getting Deion. But if you really think Deion's the guy and can do all this and that, hey, if that's what you want to do, Jerry, go for it. I haven't seen a more Cowboys move in a while, but I'm totally rooting for it. I just think it'd be so fun. So that's the Cowboys stuff going on right now. Then you have the Raiders with Antonio Pierce gone. He was a good coach. It was his first year after being an interim before. I just don't really know if he was going to be a super successful head coach. I think he was a good culture builder, and the guys seemed to like him. But in terms of saying, yeah, I want this guy to be here for a while, like I think you got to have a good amount of stuff in place already for him to really be a good coach, and that just wasn't the case there with the Raiders, especially offensively. Now, basically, what it's going to be is just going to be Tom Brady's choice. Because if you don't know, Tom Brady's a minority owner in the Raiders when he retired, and he's going to have a lot of say. And because of that, it seems like the Ben Johnson to the Raiders is really gaining a lot of steam. Which, if you think about that, imagine that division. Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, Ben Johnson. That'd be the greatest head coaching division of all time. Literally. That'd be insane. And in terms of just the job, he gets a big city, really nice stadium. Not a quarterback right now, but he's going to be able to choose his guy in a draft. If I were to just preview it, let's say because the Raiders, they've interviewed a few people. Obviously, Ben Johnson's the only one I've seen news-wise about going to the Raiders. So if they don't get him, obviously they're going to get just some other name. I really don't know who. Ben's the only one I've seen, but Brady's obviously going to have a ton of influence in that. But if he goes there, again, I would say if he's hired this year, hey, we'll draft according to what's available, the best players here and everything, and just go into that season assessing where these guys are at in your offense, and the quarterback class is much better next year. Just wait till next year. Just do. I think O'Connell obviously is not a guy you want, but I feel like he's proven that he's capable of playing a good amount of games. Like he is. He's not great or anything. He's one of the worst starting quarterbacks, but I would say over the course of the year, when guys get injured and everything, he starts to look a little better, compared to all other guys around in the NFL, as you have players that get hurt. So, yeah, he's more of a backup. You could sign someone for a year, but if I'm Ben Johnson and I go to the Raiders, I wouldn't just immediately try and go draft Cam Ward or trade up for something like that or whatever. I'd just get the best player, see how the team is, evaluate stuff, and then next year go ahead and draft your guy. That's what I would do. But Ben Johnson's the main one I've seen for the Raiders. So we'll see if he actually does go there or if there's anyone else there. But that division, oh my God. Coaching-wise, that'd be insane. Next one's the Jaguars. Really interesting job. Doug Peterson obviously is going to be out, or was, currently is out. He kind of did worse than I expected, but it really just seems like he gave up. If you listen to his press conferences, he just did not care at all, and it really seemed like he just completely gave up on the team and just life, basically. But I think the Jaguars being poorly run is going to really hinder their ability to get a real good head coach candidate. I think it is. Which the biggest thing is because they kept their terrible GM, and I don't know why. I don't know why they kept Trent Baalke. He had one of the worst drafts last year I didn't love, and I think he's done a pretty terrible job. And they kept him, but they fired Doug. Just doesn't make sense. So now coach is going to have to come in with a bad GM who's on a last leash. The biggest thing that helps this interest is going to be Trevor Lawrence. I still think he's very talented. I still do. If you watch, I'm telling you, man, it's just really bad situation for him right now. But, I mean, Robert Saleh has gotten some buzz around that job, which is not bad, but I think he should go be a DC for a year or so again. I would personally try and get a younger offensive coordinator who's not number one in people's lists, like a Joe Brady from the Buffalo Bills. Someone like that would kind of be who I would prefer for Jacksonville, because the top head coaching guys like Ben Johnson, he's not going to target there because of the ownership and GM stuff. But with the younger OCs who have kind of proven some stuff, I think that'd be a good spot for them. I think something, and I saw a different YouTuber talk about this, you almost have to find a coach, kind of like how the Lions did, that really fits the city. I think a good amount of times, if you have a city culture that really fits it, or the state, or whatever. In Miami, a guy like Brian Flores, when he was there, it just didn't work. It didn't. So for teams that are in Florida, like, you're really going to have a certain kind of coach that's there. Like, for Tampa Bay, Todd Bowles isn't some hard-nosed guy or whatever. Like, he's smart and everything, but he seems a little more chill. I mean, if you don't even remember, there was literally the game that Chris Godwin got injured, and they were still playing in the players in the game, and they were like, hey, you guys won the game in the fourth quarter. Like, the game was already over. Why did you just continue to play your stars? And he was like, well, I don't know. They wanted to play. So, like, and obviously, Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins. So they really need to find, or it kind of works better if they find someone that fits that kind of culture, which, you can succeed with, I think. They got to be really on their T's and Q's about, hey, like, this is what we have. Other than that, like, just follow my stuff and you're good. And I think, hey, why not take a swing at a younger guy? So a guy like Joe Brady, I think I would like for the Jaguars. The Bears. Big Bears. They have interviewed everyone under the sun. I wouldn't be surprised if they come calling to interview me. It's literally been every single candidate you can think of they've interviewed. So it's really hard to pinpoint someone. But they really, really need to nail this. Ben Johnson is priority number one, and absolutely should be. I would pay whatever he wants, give him whatever he wants. Outside of that, I think either a great offensive mind or a major culture setter on offense or defense needs to be the thing. It seems like that could be Brian Flores from the reports, which he has overachieved, or he did overachieve when he was a head coach in Miami, and he's clearly a great defensive mind, as we're seeing again in Minnesota. But he's a harsh leader. I do think he fits the culture in Chicago. I think they'd be really good. I think he just needs to really nail the offensive coordinator if they do hire Brian Flores, because honestly, Caleb has to be priority number one. So if I were to really pick, I would prefer like a really good, proven offensive mind. But if that's not there, I think getting a Brian Flores type would not be bad, as long as you can identify an offensive coordinator that you can bring with you. That is really going to help Caleb's development, because he is a very talented quarterback, and be able to understand he is very talented. Don't jump off the boat after 1 year. How many times does this happen? All the time, literally. And I really think that if they just get someone that's capable, like last year the coaching was horrendous, just get someone who's capable and able to do it, and Caleb's going to skyrocket. So that's all they need to do, but they need to nail the coaching. That's for sure. Next is going to be the Saints. I would say this is the least desirable job. So I'd either take a swing on a young, unproven mind, like a Liam Cohen, the Bucs' first-year offensive coordinator, which is what the Panthers did when they got their head coach last year. And maybe a Todd Monken from Baltimore, from Baltimore, who's their offensive coordinator, who's done really good. If he wants that job, Todd Monken also might go to Jacksonville or a different job like that, the Raiders potentially. So he's a pretty good offensive mind, I think, that could get a job. Adam Stanovich, who's Green Bay's offensive coordinator. All these guys are younger OCs. Todd Monken's a little older, but just younger OCs that are good. Or a proven head coach who, hey, give him the keys. You got the keys to just completely rebuild this team. We are stuck in cap hell. Our team is old and slow. Just get us in a good position as a group because you are a proven head coach. You've done it before. Get us in a better spot to where we can actually be a team that has somewhat of a good ceiling. And if they can do that and kind of get the most out of their younger players and everything, hey, maybe they fail in the playoffs. They were probably fired if they're on your team and they're a proven head coach, they were fired probably because they failed in the playoffs. But if they go to the playoffs and fail, it's okay. You can move on with them, and your roster is in a much better place. And that's honestly what I prefer to do. And sorry, it's probably a guy like Mike McCarthy. He makes a lot of sense. Even if the name, people don't love it, a guy like Mike McCarthy makes a ton of sense. He comes in, hey, we're in cap hell. Our team is old. We need to rebuild here. Well, you got the keys. You've done it before in terms of making guys you can get the best out of our young guys. We want our roster to be in a better place because it's easy to say, oh, you could just sign this guy to fill a hole and everything. When you're the Panthers, in the Saints and teams like that are not in these insane markets, but also their team isn't great right now. The Panthers had to overpay for Robert Hunt, for Damian Lewis, these offensive linemen that needed to come. And they did, and it worked. So the Saints, but obviously, ideally, you don't want to have to overpay. So the Saints at this point, if they're going to get anyone that's going to improve their roster, they're going to have to overpay because of the situation they're in. So I think if you get a guy like Mike McCarthy, Ron Rivera, Pete Carroll, someone like that, they've done it before multiple times in 2 different stops. They are going to get the most out of your young guys. They know what to do. And if you get to a much better position and maybe they fail in the playoffs, hey, all good. Thank you for your time and helping us. We're going to go a different direction and get a guy, that is a newer, more coveted candidate who hasn't had, a chance yet. And he can come into this team and see what it goes. But in terms of the most immediate stuff, they're kind of the wild card. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but it would be one of the two, a young, unproven mind or a proven head coach. And then when I mean young, I mean like you've been an OC for only a little bit and you showed good flashes young, because that's the kind of guys they're going to have to do there. And he just gets his hands on the team and he's going to have to grow with it. So one of those two things. And then the last one is the Jets. They flirted with Rex Ryan. Have obviously been the place that's had the longest opening. The time it's been open, it's been the longest. Like I said, it flirted with Rex Ryan, other people as well. But they need a real culture setter, professional, someone who cares about the city and the team, and is able to obviously speak to with the media. And I think maybe some of that stuff we aren't 100% sure about for this candidate, but I think most of it fits, and I think that guy is Aaron Glenn, Lions DC. I think that's who they're going to get, and I think it's going to be a pretty good it's someone that I would also hire as well if I was New York. The team's in a weird spot. They're going to have to figure out, mainly offensively, what they're going to do. Obviously, you've had my stances on Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers can still play in the NFL. He's still an above-average quarterback at this point. But the coaching was horrendous, and the play calling was terrible, and I really hated the situation. Obviously, Rodgers not as good as he was, but he's not as bad as people think he is, and it just seems like he's probably not going to come back to the team. If he does, I don't think that'd be bad, because I don't think you're in a position, if you're the Jets, to go draft a rookie quarterback that can start right now. It's just not out there. If you do that, you'd have to just sign a guy on a 1-year deal and make him fill in. But why would you do that when you already have Rodgers there? But with his stuff with the owners, I think it would make sense to move on. Probably going to trade him somewhere or cut him if he retires. Maybe Devontae Adams leaves the team probably. Hassan Reddick. Just get all these guys that have not necessarily ruined, but haven't really promoted the good culture that we want to set here. Get them out and have Aaron Glenn and have them get guys that actually want to be there in the building. But again, stuff to figure out offensively, but Glenn has been very good as a defensive coordinator, deserves a head coaching chance. He was a former player, used to play in New York for the Jets. And, the Jets' offensive wasn't great this year, but the defense statistically was worse. And with Aaron Glenn, I think those players, he's really going to bring them back to what they were beforehand, which was a great defense, because they have a bunch of talented players on that defensive side. I would be worried for him because of just the unsure offensive situation. But I think Glenn to the Jets in general, I think they'd be a good fit, and I would like that hire. So Lions fans, sorry, both your OCs and DC are gone. They are. So hopefully you can be the Eagles, not in between where they had that 1 year where they went 10-2 and then collapsed, but kind of the Eagles right now where, hey, we have a desirable location. Let's get proven OCs and DCs that want to be here and maybe get another chance at a head coaching job because our team is so good. Or, hey, we're going to hire within because these guys learned exactly from the previous ones and they're that good. So Lions fans, sorry, but hey, if you win a Super Bowl this year, it'll all work out. It'll all work out. So hopefully you guys do. We're rooting for you. But that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening or watching on YouTube or on whatever platform you are streaming the podcast on. Again, I'll have more videos out. Going to do a mock draft video, the first one, NFL draft coming up, and then I'm going to do a kind of 2022 NFL draft, reevaluation kind of episode that I'm putting a lot of work into. So that'd be cool if you go watch that as well when that comes out. But of course, as always, stay smart, stay sharp, and I will see you guys later. Peace.